Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, we are looking at the first ever Prism Star supporter card. Now, we've seen a couple of Prism Star Pokemon. They are Solgaleo and Lunala. I've done videos about them. I will try and remember to pop the links to those ones in the description. But ladies and gentlemen, they are not limited, Prism Star cards I mean, to Pokemon. No, ladies and gentlemen, we are also seeing that these are going to be supporter cards. And I've heard rumours of energy cards as well. So my point is this. It's still a Prism Star card. That means you can only have one of these cards in your deck, though you can have as many Prism Star cards in your deck as you like, as long as they are all different types. And when you use it, it does not go in the discard pile, it goes in the lost zone. Being a supporter, you cannot use something like a Lusamine to recover it from the discard pile, pop it back into your hand. It, ladies and gentlemen, is gone forever. You get one in the game, and that's your lot. But I suppose the important thing to do now is actually look at what it does. And ladies and gentlemen, it has a little bit of potential. Now, first things first, you can only play this card if your active Pokemon is a water Pokemon or a metal Pokemon. Little bit weird, we'll touch on that more in a moment. Your opponent shuffles their bench Pokemon and all cards attached to them into their deck until they only have 2 bench Pokemon remaining. They choose 2 bench Pokemon and shuffle all the rest of their bench Pokemon into their deck. Now, this is not as good as something like Sylveon GX's plea. At first, it was being reported like it was Sylveon GX's plea. That would be amazing. In that situation, you would get to choose 2 of their Pokemon, make them shuffle them into their deck, get rid of 2 Gardevoir from their field so they've got nothing left. It would be crazy good as a supporter. Then it was being reported, now I was at the London International Championship streaming today, I was running around streaming, I was getting reports from all over the place, but it was reported like your opponent chooses 2 of their bench Pokemon and shuffles them into their deck, in which case you grab a Parallel City, you pop it on their bench and you force them down to 3 bench spots remaining. They get rid of their tech Pokemon like, I don't know, Tapu Lele. Then you make them shuffle 2 of their bench Pokemon into their deck, but of course they've only got 3 remaining, so the chances are they're going to have to take good ones. And in that situation, something like an Escape Rope would have been amazing to make them switch and probably force them into a more awkward situation. But no, ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't the case either, and this translation we have is not actually as good as either of the other 2 we thought it might be. Your opponent keeps 2 Pokemon, shuffles the rest of them into their deck. So if you're against something like a Gardevoir, they can just keep a Gardevoir and an Octillery, and then they've got a draw engine and they've got a Gardevoir ready to go. Now, sometimes this can actually be helping your opponent, because a lot of the time the superfluous Pokemon that you've got in play are things like Tapu Lele. But here's the thing. Tapu Lele is primarily played for its Wonder Tag ability. You drop it down onto the field, search your deck for a supporter card, pop it into your hand, and then Tapu Lele just kind of sits there. Maybe you attack with it at some point during the game, but most of the time, you're not really into that. You don't bother doing that. No, ladies and gentlemen, it just sits there. So actually, playing Cyrus sometimes will just free up 2 of your opponent's bench spots. That's not really what you're looking to do here. That actually helps your opponent. Not only do you free up 2 of their bench spots, but you also put Tapu Lele back into their deck, or you give them the opportunity to do so, at which stage they can then draw into Tapu Lele later on and grab that Guzma to win the game. Little bit annoying in that situation. It essentially becomes like a Parallel City, except they only get to keep 2 bench Pokemon rather than 3, and the Pokemon go into their deck rather than getting discarded, which, as I've suggested, might actually sometimes be a bit of an advantage. But here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes you need more than 2 bench Pokemon. In fact, a lot of the time you do. So let's go back to my Gardevoir example. In an ideal situation for Gardevoir, you probably need a Gardevoir with which to attack and a backup Gardevoir, not to mention the fact that you then get 2 abilities to attach 2 extra fairy energy per turn. Then you really want to Gallade out because the Premonition ability that allows you to rearrange the top 5 cards of your deck is great. And it gives you a fighting type attacker, good against stuff like Sylvali, which was really big this weekend at the London International Championships. So you kind of want the Gallade as well. And then of course you want the Octillery, because a late game N is really punishing. So you make sure that you've got an Octillery, so if you do get End, you're looking good. Well, then your opponent drops down a Cyrus. You get to choose which 2 of those 4 Pokemon you keep. But you only get to keep 2 of them. So you either lose Octillery, your draw engine, or you lose Gallade, his extra typing and the really good premonition ability, or you lose your backup Gardevoir. Although, to be clear, in the situation I'm talking about, you would have to lose 2 of those 3. This can be a very disruptive card. But I need to make it super clear here that the disruption that you can get from this is very, very much mitigated by the fact that your opponent makes the choice as to which of the Pokemon they get to keep. That is absolutely huge. Against something like a Metagross, they get to keep 2 of their Metagross. And yeah, they might lose a 3rd Metagross, but they've probably got a Metagross in the active. And in the mid to late game, Metagross really just needs free Metagross, so they can retreat and max potion and then use free lots of abilities to get free energy back on. So actually dropping this against a Metagross probably isn't going to disrupt them that much. And let's be realistic here. A lot of the time when you drop a Parallel City, your opponent discards Pokemon from their bench that have damage counters on them that are in danger of being KO'd in the near future. Well, here your opponent can do the same thing, except that Zoroark isn't getting KO'd. Well, not KO'd, but discarded and put in the discard pile. It's getting shuffled back into the deck, ready to be searched out again in the future. Now, there is, of course, a slight downside for your opponent here as well. Yes, the Pokemon go back into their deck so they can be reused, that's good. But also, if you get towards the late game, you force your opponent to put more cards into their deck, which means if you play an N, they've got more cards in their deck they don't want to draw, meaning that they might be less likely to draw that Guzma, for instance, which will win them the game. Having said that, I'm sitting here talking about possible advantages your opponent could get from you playing a supporter, and that's not good, ladies and gentlemen. You get to take away up to 3 of your opponent's bench Pokemon, that is good. You get to take away your opponent's options, and that is good. But then again, you're allowing your opponent to heal bench Pokemon, or at least take them off the field like an Ace Roller would, and you're potentially allowing your opponent to reuse Pokemon like Tapu Lele, and this is not exactly ideal in every situation. And then, of course, we add to the fact that it can only be used when there's a metal Pokemon or a water Pokemon in the active. Now, some of these are being played. In London this weekend, we've seen metal decks playing stuff like Registeel. Well, that's really good. That is a metal Pokemon. Obviously, Metagross itself could be playing this. And let's not forget that Alolan Vulpix is a great tech in a whole bunch of decks, because that beacon ability for 0 energy, I say ability, I mean attack, allows you to search your deck for any 2 Pokemon and put them into your hand. We have some good metal Pokemon, we have some good water Pokemon, but they're not exactly running wild at the moment. I think Kartana could be a really good tech, but having to have it on the field and then in the active so that you can play the supporter. I mean, by now you're probably getting a sense that I'm not a huge fan of this supporter, and I'm really not. I think I'm going to give this between 2 and 3 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. I'm not saying that this is a terrible supporter. It absolutely has its uses. But it's a once per game supporter. You can only use it if there's a water or a metal Pokemon in the active, and your opponent chooses which Pokemon they shuffle back, and sometimes they can heal Pokemon or reuse Pokemon, and they can get a slight advantage from this. There are games where you will drop a Cyrus onto the field, and you will wreck your opponent's setup to the stage where they lose the game. But there's just so much to do in order to get there. I'm not buying it. Last time we had a Cyrus card, it was great. Although we had another one, which was great. I don't think this Cyrus is up there at all. But as always, I would like some discussion if you think I'm wrong. And given how many people have told me I've been overly excited about cars lately, I'm sure there'll be a few people that tell me I'm underexcited about this. But honestly, on the first translation, when I thought it was just a Plea GX, I was in love. Second translation, bit less so. By the time we got the actual translation, which by the way came from Rappelman TCG, the lovely David Hockman himself, I'm just completely underwhelmed, to be perfectly honest. But that's what the comment section is there for. Go nuts! Be nice. I want to hear from you. I love discussion. Let's get rolling. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and twitch.com/PTCGRadio for some live action. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, etc., you can do so at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.